cloud. Okay, so in order to understand how this section of the prayer book works, we have to look at the Mishna. And the Mishna is the first layer of rabbis at the turn of the millennium, back in the, when BCE turned into CE, talking about how to do prayers in the absence of a temple. They started talking about this after the exile to Babylon in 586. They started talking about how do we replace the sacrificial system with prayer. And the way they do this is by writing down, or first of all, they would say all these things. They would just memorize all these laws that they came up with. But then they started writing them down. And when they start recording them, the first thing they start writing about, all these rules, is about the Shema itself and how it is tied to the sacrificial system. And we're going to look at this. It's the very first Mishnah. When does one recite the Shema in the evening? From the time the priests come in to eat truma. So in order to understand this, what you have to have on board is an understanding of what priests they're even talking about. They're talking about the Kohanim, who are kind of the ritual specialists as described in the Torah, primarily in the book of Vayikra or Leviticus. And truma, you would have to know what truma was. And truma is a part of the sacrificial system by which the priests are paid. So if you're not real clear on those sections of the Torah, I'd suggest going back and reading those. In any case, what they're doing by saying, when do you recite the Shema in the evening? Well, they've already presumed that saying the Shema in the evening is something that is normal for Jews to do. This is something that is already a part of our practice, reciting it in some way. And by saying, when are we supposed to do it, they're making the discussion about what constitutes evening. But as they go, you'll see that what they're doing is showing that the Shema is in fact, saying it in the evening, is in fact fulfilling different mitzvot, different commandments. And in order to understand that, you've got to understand the Hebrew for mitzvah and mitzvot. Literally, a mitzvah is a commandment, right? A commandment is something that has been directed for you to do or not do in accordance with rabbinic law. Certainly, those mitzvot are put out initially via the Torah, but how they work and how we do them are entirely via the interpretation of rabbinic law. And the reason for this is because the world changes, and the rabbis have to step in and go, wait a minute, how do we fulfill this function? How do we determine what the meaning of this rule is? And how do we make it fit into our lives in a way so that we can be faithful to it? So not only do you got to know a little bit of Vayikra and a little bit of the Shema and a little tiny couple words of Hebrew, but you've got to kind of have an idea of what a mitzvah is and what time-bound prayer means. Okay, so until the end of the first watch, it says, when the priests enter to partake of their truma. Now, why in the world would we base our time and our decisions about time on a ritual which isn't even happening anymore? The priests, the rabbis, at the time of the exile to Babylon, don't have a temple. The first temple was destroyed. And lots of military things have happened which have prevented people accessing the temple in different ways. There has been a lot of political strife about who is in charge of the temple. And the temple's very existence has been threatened many times. So the rabbis are thinking, how do we associate time-bound prayer with temple sacrifice, assuming that the sacrifice might not be able to happen? So the very first line they're drawing is saying we match up our times with the times that people are supposed to do the different chores for running the temple. The evening Shema, what's evening? Evening is when the priests, the Kohanim, got to eat the food that was a part of their payment for doing their job. When people would bring sacrifices to the temple for whatever reason, you'll notice that if you read in the Torah all the rules about sacrifice, that it's not always a sacrifice where every single bit of the animal is burnt up. No, sir. Matter of fact, usually it's just cooked, and mostly people eat it. There are some bits that are burnt totally, some bits that are not. The ones that aren't, people eat as part of the observance. Sometimes as part of a festival, like Passover festival, Sukkot festival, Shavuot festival, people would bring their sacrifices, but the sacrifices were kind of ritually barbecued and eaten. And there were bits that are set aside to give specially to the priests, to the Kohanim. Now, why in the world would they give those guys that extra bit? Well, it's because it's a hereditary job. The guys who got to be the Kohanim, it just happened to be their last name, Cohen. They were in that tribe. And the people who helped them were the Levi'im, just happened to be Levites in that tribe. And because their main job was taking care of the temple, they didn't generally have time to do a lot of farming or other business stuff. So it was on the people to support them because that's how they had to live. They had to live right by the temple. They had to do all kinds of funny rules, and they didn't have a lot of time. They couldn't really farm, not very well. So their paycheck, their compensation for giving up their livelihood like that is called truma. A contribution is a truma, right? Just that. Okay, we're taking care of business here. All right, so having said that, then what the rabbis are going to do after this, they're going to talk about what time constitutes night. And then after that, they're going to drill down into what is the Shema. I'm sure a lot of you have heard the Shema before and even said the Shema before. And people usually think that the Shema is defined by two lines. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Elohecha, Adonai, Echad, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed, which is the part that we say quietly or silently. But that's not the whole Shema. That's the first verse of the Shema. And you'll see that if you turn to your Tanakh or your Chumash and you go to the Book of Devarim, 6:4, and you'll see that Shema Yisrael is the very first line of that, 6:4, and then it's followed by, immediately after, Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha. So that tells you that the Shema is that line, and then it is immediately followed by Ve'ahavta. They're one thing. They're all one thing. So all that stuff we say after the Shema is in fact the Shema. So here they are talking about what time constitutes evening, and that goes on for quite some time. They talk about what means when you lie down and when you rise up, as it says in the Ve'ahavta. And it discusses the laws recited in conjunction with the Shema, the blessings recited in conjunction. In the morning, when reciting the Shema, one recites two blessings beforehand and one after, which begins with true and firm, emet v'yatziv. In the evening, One recites 2 blessings beforehand and 2 after. Emet ve'emunah and hashkivenu. That's how they put it. Now, in that saying emet ve'emunah, they also start including, I'm going to keep going down here, it is a mitzvah by Torah law to mention the exodus from Egypt at night. Sometimes people say during the day, sometimes people at night. The exodus is mentioned at night. They go on and on and on about that. And that is how we talk about redemption, escape from Egypt between Emet and the Amidah. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go do a new share, and I'm going to show you the outline of the Shema and its blessings. So we have the call to community prayer. That's
Is it just me or is Emily frozen?
Frozen and she's dropped off, I believe.
Okay. Uh-oh, because I'm like in the middle of cleaning my kitchen while listening, and like all of a sudden I like stopped hearing her talk, and I was like, oh, is this like my Wi-Fi bumping out again? But yeah, I don't see that she's even on the meeting now.
I'm trying to find her number for texting.
Yeah, computers.
I know.
Almost 2
Technology.
years into this thing, and it's just still, stressful.
It's, in theory, a great idea.
Yes, absolutely.
So I texted her. Hopefully she'll come back on.
Thank you, Stacy.
She says she's having Wi-Fi issues. Hang on. Yeah, I had really bad Wi-Fi issues. I had to change providers. It got really awful.
Yeah, the Wi-Fi in Yakima definitely is hit or miss sometimes, but I do find that I get better signal for some reason at school, and I wonder if it's because of the mountains, because where like my apartment is closer to the hills, so I
Oh,
think
yeah.
I block signal.
Right. Do you have towers closer to the school, maybe?
Probably, I'm guessing. Plus, because at school they may be more diligent with like making sure that the internet's updated and
Yeah, they've got to have access with research and everything else going on. So is everybody following what Emily's talking about?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Stacy. Yeah, I know a little bit about that. When she was talking about the Mishna,
Uh-huh.
I remember the first time she had brought that over when she was mentioning the Kohanim and Levites, but yeah, it's just really interesting the kind of the changeover from temple service or temple sacrifice to time bound prayer and the Shema. and making those connections. So it's nice to learn. She was, she had just put up the what is it, the kind of the order,
Right.
right before she cut out. So but it's I like the outline like that.
Yeah, it's drives home, I think, to me, how time-bound things are, how much time you have to say something. And it struck me, I always wondered why they called it services. Why do we go to services? Well, apparently that's reminiscent of the temple sacrifices as well.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. Yeah. And I also like the obvious, the Siddur, and the root of the word being order, the like Seder. And so it's like order, services. That's the root, the order of prayers. So it makes sense, I'd like to know more words that begin with those roots, or begin with those, or have the same Hebrew root,
Yeah. It is really interesting how much you can infer by knowing
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah.
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 I don't know if she's gonna bring this up too. I didn't think of the word with order. That's really an awesome observation.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
I'm reading that. Yeah. And it's just I have a little Hebrew language book called, I believe it's called Aleph Isn't Enough. And the second one is Aleph. One is Aleph Isn't Tough, and then the other is Aleph Isn't Enough is the second edition. But it does a really good job of that, of using, of taking Hebrew words with very familiar words, and then showing you like at least 5 or 7 other words that that are built off just by changing the vowels or adding a prefix or suffix. You get, so I'd be interested to see what other what we can draw from that, so yeah.
That's a great series of books, because rather than teaching you grammar and the alphabet, they teach you about things you already know about. Tie things to that.
Yeah, they are.
It's a great approach.
Yeah. So there she is.
She coming back? Oh boy.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that. Had some technical difficulties. Stuff is crazy. Okay. Tell me, did you guys bring up any stuff that you want to clear up before we go on?
Well, we talked about the root of the word Siddur, Seder as being order.
Yes.
And you were just before you cut out, you had the order or the outline of the Shema, or the blessings and the prayers before and after.
Yes.
But I just brought that up, and I was talking with Stacy and I think Michaela, or was it Kenya?
Uh-huh.
And so we were just briefly talking about that.
Yeah, order is what's happening. That's why we've got to do this. We're doing this stuff in order. And it's one of the reasons that we have fixed prayer. This order has to do with replacing a solid thing in time. It is a ritual in time. Okay, now what I'm going to do.
Yeah, I think that's what struck me, is how very time-bound these things are.
Yeah.
And that was really important, determining that exact time frame.
Right. And that's because the idea of time is so central to Judaism. This is one of the ways that we express our connection via time. And our idea of time, whilst it is held in different places in different ways, is an associative, multidimensional time as opposed to a straightforward linear time. The way that we hold it is with fixed prayer and fixed holidays. All right, I'm going to go back to and I'm going to share my Shema outline once again. All right. All right, so here we go. All right, so we start out with the Baruch Hu. And the Baruch Hu is important because what it does is it is literally calling the community as a group to prayer. Now, if one is saying the Shema by themselves, you don't say the Baruch Hu because there's nobody to call, right? You're not calling anybody. You would go right to blessing over creation. So the way that these prayers are set up, when we read that Mishna where first they say, yeah, you're going to have 2 before and 1 or 2 after, and then they go on to talk about the leaving of Egypt and how that is also included, that shows you that these prayers, at least the ideas of them, were already extant when the Mishnah was written down. They presume they're in about whatever, between 1 and 200 CE, that people already know that these are our Shema, that these are the Shema and its blessings. Then you're going to say a prayer about creation, about the world around us. That is the first prayer that you're going to say. The second one is going to be about revelation, and that means the giving of Torah as an act of love between God and Israel, being us, right? Kol Yisrael is the people Israel. And that connection via Torah is what is celebrated there. So we are unique by having Torah, and what is in the Torah? The Shema. The Shema is saying some Torah, because we know that this is specifically Devarim 6:4, right? The Shema. Once we have completed the Shema, we say Emet, which is a prayer simply saying, this is true. For us, this is true. We hold this to be true. And we follow that with talk about redemption, remembering going out of Egypt. After that, we will transition to the Amidah, which is the standing prayer. And that's the one that we'll start looking at next week. Right now we're looking at the Shema. So that's the basic structure. And it changes a little bit for time of day. Time of day. It's going to change a little bit if it's morning or if it's evening. And then if it's midday, if it's mincha, it's pretty much the ma'ariv situation. Okay, so we're going to move on to a new share, and this share is going to be the Shema and its blessings doc. And here we are. All right, so during Shacharit, 2 blessings are recited before the Shema and 1 after the Shema. Yeah. See, and this is the thing that's hard to drill down to, is that there are more than 2 blessings after, but they are kind of all of a piece. The Emet blessing goes directly to Michamocha. So it's kind of a piece. So we're saying the truth part, and then we're going right into redemption from Egypt. So the 2 blessings before, that are recited before the Shema, are Yotzer Or, and that's the blessing about creator, maker, former, Yotzer, former of light, the creator of light. Because of course it's daytime, and we're saying Yotzer Or, we're noticing the light. And lots of other great things about creation. And Ahava Rabbah, great love. And that is about doing mitzvot, and it is about reading Torah, and about the Torah and how we hope to learn it. The blessings after are Emet V'Yatziv, this is all during the day, and Michamocha. And then we transition to the Amidah with a prayer called Tzur Yisrael. Very short, and we ask for God to stand with us and keep us safe. But it's very short, Tzur Yisrael. And we go right from Tzur Yisrael to the Amidah with no break. It makes it really, really smooth, no break. We just go right there. Okay. Now, Ma'ariv is going to be a little bit different. 2 blessings before and 2 after. We're going to say the first one is Ma'ariv Aravim, right? The one who makes the evening, who brings on the evening, because we're noticing darkness, and this is the one that has the planets and the stars in it, and the things we notice about creation at night. And Ahavat Olam, eternal love. And the thing that's different about Ahavat Olam and the morning one, Ahava Rabbah, is that there's not as much about learning Torah in Ahavat Olam. Why? Because it's nighttime, and people didn't often have candles with which to study. So the idea was you were saying this to wrap up your day. Not your day in the morning when supposedly you'd have lots of time to study or whatever, but in the evening. You're doing everything with an eye toward wrapping it up. So Ahavat Olam. After that is Emet Ve'emunah, true and faithful, and again, Micha Mocha. Only it's the evening version of Micha Mocha. We transition to the Amidah here with the Hashkivenu prayer. The Hashkivenu prayer is the one where we say, protect us. Spread out the sukkah of peace over us and protect us at night. And it's longer and more involved because the idea is people are more worried about going out at night. They've wrapped up their work and they've said their prayers, and then they've got to, maybe they said their prayers out in the field or something, and then they've got to walk home and be safe. So at night, there's a little extra layer of praying for protection. And then from there, that goes to the Amidah. All right, so I'm going to stop that share. And then I'm going to say, okay, so far, any questions? Is there anybody who is lost, confused, doesn't even know what I'm talking about, that I can help you with? Any questions on vocabulary? Any questions on time? Anything you got?
Can you tell me where to find this in our Siddur?
Yes, I can, because that's the very next thing we're going to. Okay, so here we go. Next things next. Let us share the screen with, here we go. All right, so what we're doing is, here is our Yotzer Or prayer. That's the first blessing, and I'm going to show you the Baruch Hu, the Shema and its blessings. I am looking on page 58, which is a weekday morning. I don't know if is yours only Shabbat? In Mishkan Tefillah? I think yours might just be Shabbat. So
I've got weekday and Shabbat, both, 2 volumes.
I happen to have a weekday one here, so if you turn to 58, you'll see it. And here is the Baruch Hu. Here's the Baruch Hu. And you'll see the title right here. Mishkan Tefillah makes everything really, really clear. They put the titles of the sections really big. Shema Uvirchoteha, the Shema and her blessings. That's the feminine possessive. The Shema and her blessings. All right. Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamvarak, there's where we're calling. But the thing is, you'll notice this praise Hashem to whom praise is due forever. Okay, that makes sense linguistically, but in English, this praise is not as clearly a direction as the Baruch Hu is. Baruch Hu, that word is like definitely telling people to do a thing. Like, now we're going to do this, so come here. And in English, it tends to be it's a little more nuanced. And here we see over here on this side, you can see the list of the different prayers that are going to come up in the Shema and its blessings. Yotzer Or, Ahava Rabbah, Shema, Ve'ahavta, Lama'an, Vayomer, Emet, Michamocha. See, there's a little table of contents there. All right, so here we are. Now we're going to go over here to Yotzer Or. Here's another thing I'd like to kind of show you about this Siddur before we go on, which I think is really kind of important. Let's see. Mishkan Tefillah has a 2-page spread. So if you're looking at that Yotzer Or page, you will notice there's this another page on the opposite, on the opposing page, and it has a whole different prayer on it, and it has some stuff in English on it. And the reason for this is that the editors of Mishkan Tefillah wanted there to be alternative choices for people who, for whatever reason, didn't relate to the actual Yotzer Or prayer. They like to give options, and they have much more flexibility with the text than other groups might have. So they've used an entire page over here to talk about these alternative ideas. Meanwhile, we go over here to our first blessing, the Yotzer Or. First thing to point out that I don't know if you guys are familiar with, but Jewish prayers, kind of like the Parsha HaShavua, are named after the first word in the prayer, or the first couple words in the prayer. The first couple words are always Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. That's the formula for a blessing, right? The formula. They're not all called Baruch there, because we'd call everything Baruch if we did that. But we go down to the actual individual text of the prayer, and here we see Yotzer Or, okay? Yotzer Or, the creator of light. Maker of light, Yotzer Or. And so this prayer is called Yotzer Or. When you say Yotzer Or, people generally know what that is. Let's look at our text. We're going to go down here and look at the English. And it's all about our noticing and our gratitude for creation, the beauty of creation, the experience of creation, and what it's all about. It's beautiful because it talks about creator of light and darkness. You'll notice that both of the prayers about creation mention both light and darkness. We don't automatically say one is bad and one is good. They're both good. We need them both. We got to sleep, right? Creator of light and darkness, who makes peace and fashions all things. You illumine the world and those who live upon it. So you can see how there's like a light theme going with day. You daily renew creation. So we're talking about like a vibe of it being daytime. How numerous are your works, Hashem. You formed them all, filling the earth with your creatures. And by creatures, we generally mean all the walking around creatures, all the animals. Be praised for the excellent work of your hands. Hashem does not literally have to have hands. Obviously, when we talk about doing the mitzvot in the world, you and I are the hands, but we also use body parts and physicality as a metaphor for thinking of the ideas of creation and involvement in the world, and for the lights you created. Shine a new light upon Zion. See, and here's an idea added on at the end that, the people Israel themselves need a special new light shone upon us, and that we want to merit its radiance. We want to be better people. The people Israel want to do better, and we want our future hopes and dreams to be fully realized. We wrap it up with, blessed are you, Hashem, creator of all heavenly lights. So we've done a very light-focused thing. It's very light-focused. We can learn a lot of things here just by looking at the Yotzer Or prayer. We're going to see our first magic words, right? Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Always the magic words. And those are always the beginning of a bracha. That's how you know it's a bracha, because it starts Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. So these first lines, no matter what you call them, the first lines of any prayer are called and I'm going to write this in the chat, right? I'm going to say Chatima. The Chatima. That means the opening, right, is the Chatima. No, it isn't. That's the closing. Oh my gosh. Chotem is to seal. Okay. You guys.
I'm learning something here. I didn't know they were both called that. No, sorry.
Sorry, Stace. No, I'm wrong. No, please ignore me. Okay, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. The opening part is definitely using the word open, which is peticha, right? Peticha. Petach, to open. Poteach, open. Pitchuli, open for me, right? Open. It's been a day, I'll tell you. Okay, so peticha is the opening, and chatima is the close, the sealing. And I'm going to take a quick look at the chatima. So here's our peticha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam yotzer or uvrei choshech voseh shalom uvrei et hakol. That's our peticha. That's the opening, right? Then there's more. Bunch. And then you come down here to the end. Baruch atah Adonai Yotzer HaMa'orot. That is your Chatima. So if you go to a traditional, more Orthodox synagogue, you will hear the person leading the prayers, the Chazan, who might say this Peticha real clearly and then say the rest real super fast. And then he'll come out loud with the Chatima. Well, that's because they got a lot to get through. So people will come together and say this Chatima, the Peticha, and at the end, if you weren't able to follow along the whole thing as fast as the Chazan did it, then when the Chazan goes Baruch atah Adonai, you respond Baruch Hu uVaruch Shemo. Blessed is he and blessed is his name. And that's kind of like the Amen, right? When you say Amen, I'm gonna do some more writing here, and I promise not to swap my words around anymore. When we say Amen, we are saying, I agree. I agree. Amen means I agree, which is why you don't Amen your own blessing, because otherwise you're agreeing with yourself. You don't have to worry about it. When we all say like the blessing over wine or the blessing for the bread, you don't have to say Amen because you already said it. Amen is for if you just want to agree because you couldn't say it for whatever reason. But the other little bit, if someone is saying a bracha, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, and you say real quick, Baruch Hu Varuch Shemo. Baruch Hu uVaruch Shemo. It means blessed is he and blessed is his name. And you're kind of doing a thing where you like cover everything by saying that. You're saying, and when you do that, it means that you are how to say in English, you're yotzi. You are in compliance. You're in compliance. You did the prayer. Check that box. So if you're leading prayers, you got to make sure that you say that peticha, say the prayer, and then say the chatima so that everybody can be in compliance. Everybody is in it. We're all supposed to do it together, but if we don't, we'll figure it out. A lot of this stuff doesn't come up during Reform services, right? Because obviously in a much more liberal, flexible community, there's not going to be a lot of worry about being halakhically in compliance. People are more looking for the spiritual experience. But the other reason that it doesn't come up is because we have edited, I say we, I'm not even in the Reform movement, but the progressive groups have edited so heavily because what they want, the value that they're trying to repeat in their services is that everybody gets to really hear the whole prayer and be really in it. And that it can be led in a way that people can really follow, right? In a way they can really connect with. So that's the value that they're doing in Mishkan Tefillah. Now, having said that, I want to take a deep breath and look a little bit at Yotzer Or as it is traditionally said. So I'm going to stop my share and I'm going to go to my screen. And my screen is going to be like so. Here we go. All right, can you see the bit from Sfaria there? Yeah, okay, good. All right, so the Chazan says, Baruch Hu Adonai Hamvorach, just like us, right? And you respond, Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Le'olam Vayed, just like us. All right, now there's some notes here where, they're doing a little explaining because it's kind of a teaching siddur. But here we go. Now we're going to start. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam yotzer or uvorei choshech osei shalom uvorei et hakol. Just like in Mishkan Tefillah, right? Let's see if all the rest is like Mishkan Tefillah. Hameir la'aretz v'ladarim aleha brachamim uv'tivo mechadesh b'kol yom tamid ma'aseh bereshit ma'rabu ma'asecha. You see why people say it really fast? Kulam b'choch ma'asita malah ha'aretz kinyinecha. Oh, wait. Hamelech Hamromam, the king from his on high place, right? Levado Ma'oz, like he is our strength. Hamshuva, Hamfoar, it goes on and on. Let's look at this, right? Okay, so we've already said he illuminates the earth and provides light for those who dwell in it with compassion and renews this every day, continually, the work of creation. Ma rabu ma'asecha, how many are your works, Adonai? You made them all with wisdom. The earth is full of your possessions. The king who alone is exalted on high. The king is on high, who is praised and glorified and uplifted from the beginning of time. Okay, let's continue. Now, eternal God, in your abundant mercy, have compassion on us, Master, who is our strength, rock, stronghold, shield of our deliverance. There's a whole bunch of things there that we don't necessarily have. Harabim rachem aleinu, have great compassion on us. That's not in Mishkan Tefillah. Adon Uzeinu tzur Miskavenu, Magen, Yishayenu. Miskav, Ba'adenu. Okay, and we go back here and we're going to see that again, our stronghold, our shield of our deliverance, being a stronghold for us. Right? And now we're going to go back to words that we do have after that. Right? Blessed God, great in knowledge, prepared and made the rays of the sun. Let's see if it says that up there. Let's try to find it. Okay. El Baruch Gadol De'ah. Wait a minute. Guys, we don't have El Baruch Gadol De'ah. What's that all about? Right? What are we missing? Ufa al Zaharei Hama Tov Yitzar Kavod Lishmo Me'orat Natan Sivivo Duzo. Whole chunk we don't have. What does it say, and why wouldn't we have that in Mishkan Tefillah? Let us research. Blessed God, great in knowledge, prepared and made the rays of the sun. The Holy One, the Good One, goodness, source of goodness, created everything for the glory of the name of God. The luminaries he set around his throne. The chief of his groups of angels are holy beings. You guys, we're in mysticism here. Holy beings, the Chayot, embodiments of heavenly power. You know, this is kind of hard to understand unless you've read the book of Yechezkel or Ezekiel. When you look at Ezekiel, you'll notice that there are lots and lots of outrageous spiritual experience that Ezekiel is describing, pretty much out-of-body experiences. And he's describing an otherworldly dimension. Ezekiel is not alone in talking about that. And he is revealing for us the earliest parts of Jewish mysticism and Jewish spiritual tradition. He's starting to reveal those to us. And those pieces can be found in our Siddur quite a bit. The trouble is that many modern Siddurim, many liberal modern Siddurim have edited this stuff out. Why? Because it's very strange and very hard for people to cope with on a day-to-day basis. People tend to be very literal, and they have a hard time with the analogy. They have a hard time with symbolism and with metaphor. If we're willing to chew on those things and encounter this ancient tradition, I think we're going to find a lot of richness there. So he's talking about angels, right? And one of the things that's important to know about angels in Jewish tradition is that they're not frilly babies with wings, right? Angels in Jewish tradition tend to be terrifying. They're supposed to be or represent in our literature, they represent an embodiment, an expression of divine power, a unique expression of divine power. That's why there are so many different kinds of malachim. They're called malachim, right? There are scary, bad malachim, and there are powerful, defensive malachim, and there are really strange creatures that serve God in ways we don't understand. In the book of Ezekiel, he goes up and he sees these creatures with 4 faces, and they've got like wheels on their feet and wings all over their bodies, and those are called chayot, living things. Not much more than that, chayot. You may be familiar with this idea from the Talking Heads song, Slippery People. 7 times 5, they were living creatures. Yeah, that's what he's talking about. It's about having this ecstatic experience and seeing otherworldly things and coming up with ways to express the idea of beyond. Okay? When you see the word hosts, tzivaot is what that means. Tzava is, in modern Hebrew, is army. Tzivaot, hosts. The reason it says hosts is because that is a weird Elizabethan English word meaning armies. And so we get that from that King James translation thing. But what it really means is hordes of heavenly beings, of bizarre cosmic beings, hordes of cosmic beings. I think that's what would help us deal with it in modern language a little better. The Exalters of Shaddai. Who's Shaddai? Shaddai is God. God has so many names in Jewish tradition. And we're going to see how they come up throughout our liturgy. One of the uses of liturgy is to invoke all these different names of God. The idea is expressing our different aspects that we are thinking about in a particular prayer. Are we thinking about God as a protector? Are we thinking about God as a knower, an understander? Are we thinking about God as a creator? All those different things mean we're going to be using different names of God, who continually recount the glory of the Almighty and His holiness. Blessed are you for the excellent work of your hands and the light-giving luminaries. And that, in the Mishkan Tefillah, is where our prayer ends. However, in the Orthodox Siddur, it doesn't end there, folks. It keeps going. Right? Titbarak, tzrura, be blessed. You are blessed. The one who formed us, our King, creator of holy beings. Now there is a whole deal in here that frankly is an angelology. Right? Oh good, it's Clyde. Hello, Clyde. Sorry, my dog came in. Go lay down. So they're going to talk about all these different angels, literally, who forms ministering angels. Wait, we've heard that phrase before, haven't we? Shalom Aleichem, Malachei HaShalom. Welcome are you, ministering angels. What that means is those who look after us at the command of God. Divine powers that are intended to be supportive in some way. Right? All of them are beloved. All of them are pure and mighty. Now remember, purity, tahar, in Judaism doesn't mean the same thing as it does in English. We don't mean they're pure in that they're like super shiny and they smell good. We mean they are a solid embodiment of ritually appropriate, religiously appropriate energy. Okay? All of them are mighty and all of them perform with awe and reverence. Now let's see, do they perform with awe and reverence? I really want to know about that. Right? Here's your word right there. There it is right there. Uv yira, and with fear. Yirat. Right? We translate that nowadays more as awe because we're trying to give people the feeling that people aren't running around being scared all the time. It's not like we live in a horror movie or something and we're paranoid all the time. It's not that kind of fear. But then again, neither is it the kind of awe where you just go, wow, that's really beautiful. It's more than that, right? It's the moment of looking into eternity. Right? So it's a unique, Yirat Hashemayim, the fear of heaven, is a very unique kind of expression. All right. Now, why is this doing this? Oh, yeah, and here we go. See, there's a little bit of, over here in the dictionary, we've got a Hebrew dictionary, and you can look up things if you go to Sefaria, so it's kind of awesome. So there's all this stuff about angels going on here. It's Shema El HaMelech, and this is the part, so that your cantor has said all this, is chanting all this stuff, right? Titbarak Tzurei. Okay, we're going all this. Then we're going to go here, down here, and guess what? This is where the congregation comes in. Et Shem Ha'el HaMelech Hagadol Hagibor V'Hanora Kadosh Hu Uhulam Mekablim Alehem. This is where the Chazan comes back in. So there's like this whole going back and forth on this one. The leader is saying one thing, and the congregation is responding. And there's all this stuff, the name of God, and they will take upon themselves the yoke of divine sovereignty. Now, by yoke, I don't mean Y-O-L-K, like an egg yolk. I mean a yoke, like they used to put on an oxen, like this controlling kind of thing. They're talking about the angels, and they're talking about these kind of mystical beings doing all this stuff. But one of the things they talk about in here is Ol Malchut Shemayim, the yoke of heaven. And that is saying that the ideas, the commandments, the values of God are going to be something to which we agree to be subject. Ol Malchut Shemayim, the yoke of heaven. It's very deep. And everybody says Kedusha in union. Wait a minute, the Kedusha, that's a whole other part of the service. What are you talking about Kedusha right here? Well, there are several versions of that prayer that's the Kedusha, which is a part of the Amidah. It shows up in different places. And why? Well, largely because of our friend Ezekiel, again, Yechezkel. He talks about going to see angels. He goes up to, the Merkavah, the chariot of God, and there are angels, and he describes what he sees, right? He describes what he sees. They all say things together, and he's describing it. And what do they say? Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. Hashem Tzvaot, Malo Kol Aratz Kavodo. Right? That's what he's reported back that the angels have all said. That's what they're saying. Right? Actually, Yeshaya says this one. That's right. And then Ezekiel says the other one. But he's reporting what Yeshaya also reports back what he's seeing the angels do. Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzvaot. So what we take away from people having these crazy visions and reporting them in Torah is that we're choosing those things for liturgy. Our rabbis are choosing those for liturgy because they're going, look, what we learned from what angels are doing, they're doing it, so that means we should be doing it too. If this is what the angels have told us to say, in effect. So we're taking that piece of liturgy, we're reaching into the book of Isaiah here in this case, and then later on we're going to reach into Yechezkel. Right? And we're going to talk about all these different kinds of angels. We're going to reach in there, we're going to borrow this line saying, remember, they said this, da-da-da-da-da-da. So we have these models of Nevi'im, prophets going and having these experiences, and we're reporting back what they're saying. And then also earlier in the Torah, we have an episode, and even way back in the book of Bereshit, where they're doing this whole genealogy. You know those genealogies, so-and-so begat so-and-so, and it's really long and boring and everything. But there's a part in that where it says that so-and-so was the father of Henoch. Okay, this guy, Henoch. And in English, people sometimes say Enoch or Enoch. Henoch. And Henoch goes up, it says that he walked with God, for God took him. So there's a whole bunch of other extra books that are outside of our canon that are about what Henoch did when he went up to heaven. So they're almost like midrashim, they're extra. And the narrative of that midrash is that, he went up there and the angels taught him how to pray. So when we are doing some of this stuff that makes reference to angelology, as well as all the rest of creation and all these other wonderful things about the Holy One, noticing all this angelology is about, this is why we know we're saying what we are meant to say. And when we do that part where we say, this is what we're really supposed to be talking about, we say, see, look here. When people have mystical experiences, the angels taught them some things, and they taught it to us too. So that's why we have all that. And everybody goes, but the thing is about this that's different, in the Amidah, when you get the Kedusha, right? That's the part that goes, Nekadesh Shimcha Ba'olam, Keshem Shmaktishim Oto Bishmei Marum Kakatuv Al Yad Neviecha, Vekara Ze'el Ze Ve'amar, Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzivahot, like that. And when you say that, Kadosh, Kadosh, that's congregation responds, Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. You're standing. And you stand on your toes every time you say Kadosh. Because you're like reaching up toward being angelic, toward elevating your prayer. And you symbolically, the people do that to show that they are like the chorus of the angels. And the person leading you is supposed to be like Henoch, being taught. Now, in this case, in Yotzer Or, which is not part of the Amidah, this is part of the Shema and its blessings, our Yotzer Or prayer is called the sitting Kedusha, where we just sit. We don't rise up, but even so, we say, Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tziva'ot, Malok ha'aretz kevado. V'ha'ofanim v'chayot ha'kodesh. Right? So now they're describing all these different freaky things that all of our Nevi'im have seen. And then you say, Baruch kavod Adonai mimkomo. Yechezkel. There's Yechezkel from his place. That's the place that Yechezkel went to visit. And he'll say, I saw this and I saw that, and it was really crazy. And we're going, yes, we know you went there and you learned stuff and you brought it back. Oh, and then we miss out on the La'el Baruch poem, which is beautiful. They offer pleasant melodies to God who is living and enduring. They utter hymns and make praises heard. He is the performer of mighty deeds, maker of new things. I mean, this is really, really beautiful. But, Now, causer of deliverance to sprout forth, creator of cures. creator of cures. Tehilot. Norah Tehilot. All right. Now we're going to go back here at this point, and we go back into where Mishkan Tefillah allows us to continue. Right? Mechadesh betuvo b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh v'reshit. Right? So it's okay for us to say that God is awesome in praise, master of wonders, renews in his goodness each day continuously the work of creation. As it is said, Ka'amar, La'oseorim Gadolim, creator of the great lights. We don't have that part. That's not in Mishkan Tefillah. Can't say creator of the great lights. They cut that out. I don't know why. Okay. Then we go to Orkhadash, the new light. Orkhadash. And you'll see that they have it in theirs too. Shine a new light upon Sion. Right? And many people interpret that as shine a new light upon the land, the literal land of Eretz Yisrael. Some people see it as much more symbolic, meaning wherever the people of Israel are, what have you. It's pointing toward redemption. It's pointing toward a messianic age of awesomeness. Nah. Now we're done and we're at Ahava Rabbah. We've only gotten through the first blessing of the Shema. It's crazy time. Now I want to look at Ahava Rabbah a little bit here in the traditional one because I have a great struggle to overcome with Ahava Rabbah. And I'm sure you've noticed it before if you've ever davened Shacharit with me. I always go right to Avinu Malkeinu, right? Chemla Gedola V'Teira Chamalta Aleinu. Avinu Malkeinu. And I always put it right in there. But it's not in Mishkan Tefillah, the Avinu Malkeinu part. And then Havinu Ha'av Harachamam Hamrachem Rachem Aleinu. That's heavily edited. Why is it heavily edited? I don't know. Let's go down and look at the translation. Everlasting love, you have loved us with great... Why did they translate that as pity? It's compassion. Whatever. Have you had compassion upon us? Pity and mercy are, again, have different meanings in English than they might in other situations. And they've really come to be very laden words in English, and especially coming from the era of King James translation of the Bible, which included Hebrew Bible. I think it is more accurate to say compassion. Our Father, our King. Oh, maybe that's the part that we're cutting out. I don't know. We know that there is an aspect of God that we call our Father, Avinu. But the flip side is, there's an aspect we call Mother. El Shaddai means the one who nursed us, the one with breasts. So literally, it's actually much more explicitly female. The presence, the immanent aspect of God, the presence of God is constantly expressed as female. The Shekhinah is definitely a feminine concept. And by feminine and masculine, I don't mean literally gendered, right? In a way that we would think of as men and women walking around. Hebrew is a gendered language, as many languages are. German is gendered, French is gendered, what have you. And it's hard for English speakers to get their minds around. It's a big pain. But one of the things that happens with gender in language is that the gender is not about, as David Sedaris says, good sir dish rag, I mean, okay, if a dish rag is a man, is masculine, that doesn't mean that your dish rag is a boy. It has to do with characteristics that are kind of beyond the ordinary. And certainly in mysticism, over time, we start assigning the descriptor, masculine and feminine, to different sides of the tree of life, right? The side of Gevura, strength, and the side of Chesed, compassion. right? And that they are held in balance. And those are often described as a masculine side and a feminine side. That doesn't mean one is boily and one is girly. It means that there is a type of binary thought that these guys are bringing to this. But by that same token, we look into Jewish law very deeply, and we look into Jewish mysticism deeply, and we see that our teachers are wrestling with ideas of gender and ambiguity way more than we expect. They are really thinking about this stuff, and they expect balance, and they do not privilege one over the other once they really drill down into it. But in any case, there's an idea of an aspect of our father, our king, that is very like Gevura and very masculine. And we see it a lot around the High Holy Days because we're feeling like, oh, we're really in trouble. But again, we will see lots and lots of feminine imagery when we talk about our prayers for healing, our prayers for protection, all kinds of stuff like that. Okay. So we cut that Avinu Malkeinu out of there. And then what else did we do? The other thing that we cut out is lead us upright. Okay, we have that, right? Lead us upright to our land because you are God who performs acts of deliverance. And that's the part up here that goes, Kiel Poel Yeshua Atah Uvanu Vacharta Mikolam Velasho. Wait, what happened? Uvanu Vacharta is the end of that sentence in Mishkan Tefillah. Uvanu Vacharta, who chose us, Mikol Am Velashon, from all peoples and languages. Right? We're kind of saying the way we talk to God is unique. The way we connect with God is unique to our group. All peoples and all languages. Out of all peoples and all languages. We're acknowledging the uniqueness of the Jewish construct of communication with God. But that's kind of intimidating and kind of scary because it might be interpreted as we're somehow the most awesome, or we're the best, or we're doing it right. And that is not what is happening. Because Judaism fundamentally is not we're the only right religion and everyone else is an idiot. We are our religion, and we are doing it. I don't know what you're doing, this is what we're doing. You guys do your thing, live and be well. We're doing our thing. It's the best example of how we see ourselves in the context of the greater world. What do we say about our neighbors worshiping in different ways? We say, live and be well. Go for it. No. And we know that God is listening to them too. But that's not our problem. Our problem is we got to learn how to do it in Hebrew. We have a job to do. It's not necessary. We're not trying to tell everybody to be Jewish because it's the best thing you can possibly be. As a matter of fact, we're telling you, it's a lot of work. It's a big pain. You got to learn Hebrew, and you got to do all this stuff, and you got to be confused by it and argue about it and go, I don't know if I even like that, and talk about it and hash it out. It's a challenge. But in any case, from among all peoples and tongues, we are unique, and our language is unique. And because we're talking about Torah, right? You have loved us. You taught statutes of life, right? That we want to be able to listen, learn, teach, preserve, practice, and fulfill all the words in your Torah. That's why we talk about language. This is like we've gone from talking about creation, which and mystical beings and the world beyond and just all this stuff that is otherworldly, into what it is to be human and how humans relate to God. We have words, we have language, we have ideas, we have rules, we have structure. So there's a couple of little differences in Ahava Rabbah. Now we're going to get into the Shema. Right? The Shema. This is the first one, And what I'm going to do right now is really quick. I know I'm going to start wrapping up here pretty soon, but I want to go to the Book of Devarim. I want to go to, here we are in verse 4, 6:4, right? Shema Yisrael, Hashem Eloheinu, Hashem Echad, right? God is one. See, and they make that dalet at the end of Echad real big. So you say Echad. Why? Because it's not a resh. Achar would mean God is other. We don't do that. Shema Yisrael. Listen. Listen up, everybody. We're talking to each other when we say the Shema. We are declaring. We're making a statement. We follow that with a quiet kind of sub-breath, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. We'll see that if we turn back, but quickly I want to look at this. So what the next line of the Shema is Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha. That's why we go right to the Ve'ahavta, because they're mushed together. I hate interrupting them, but I sometimes do. We're not supposed to. I find myself interrupting them because I know that many people have grown up with the tradition of them being on separate pages and not really understanding that they're two separate things. So I want to let people know, okay, now we're going to the rest of the Shema sort of thing. So I'm trying to get people on board with just going right to it, but I don't know if that's how long that's going to take or whatever. All right, it is 8:15, and what I want to do is, I guess we're going to continue this next week, and I want to take a minute and see if there are questions. Yeah.
I think the only question, I think this is all really incredible, thank you, but when you're doing personal prayers at home, I know that you can say the Hatikvah, I know there are different ways of approaching it, but I don't know what fulfills doing it correctly. Will you ever cover that?
Oh, it's about, well, I'm kind of doing this with an eye toward synagogue prayer, but I'll throw in some stuff. If you are trying to say the Shema by yourself, if you just do Chatima and Peticha, you should be good.
Mm-hmm.
Anything where you're calling people.
Right.
Right, because there's no point. What are you doing, right? You can't say Kaddish by yourself, and you can't say the Baruch Hu by yourself. So you just go ahead and you say the Shema and its blessings, and then you move right on to the Amidah. Right, and the same thing with the Amidah. The Amidah, actually, if you're praying a weekday Amidah and you look at the Shemona Esrei, they go by pretty quick because they're pretty short. And when we get to the Amidah, we'll look at the Shemona Esrei. But again, if you're really stuck, if you do the Peticha and Chatima, you're pretty much Yotzi. Nothing. I'd say do that. Yeah, do that. Do what you can.
Yeah, there's that too.
Right. There's this Orthodox rabbi who one time said, somebody said, I'm so religious and I love being really religious, but and like super Orthodox and stuff, but there's this one thing that they couldn't do. Oh, I know what it was. Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. Now I remembered it wrong. Anyway, the guy says, I just can't do this one thing over here. I think that's crazy. And the rabbi said, do the mitzvot that are available to you.
Yeah.
You got to really think about it. Like, if you really want to say prayers 3 times a day and you're totally into it and you really totes want to do it, even just doing it the dumb way, the fastest way possible, is still doing it, and you're doing a rhythm. It's more about rhythm and the mindfulness, being present, having the right intent. We're going to learn in the rest of the Mishnah is more important than anything, right? It's about that focus. You could be saying anything with that focus, and it's like meaningful. So the intent is what is key in the Shema. focus, and being able to get into a groove that is beyond the letter. And for that reason, it's kind of almost, it's better. For that reason, it's one of the reasons that I want to teach prayer, because I would like people to be so familiar with it that they can feel it and get into the rhythm and understand that this is our meditation. This is our meditation. Sinking into the Amidah, sinking into the Shema and its blessings. That's for us to meditate and find our center. Right? It's just that our mantra is super long, that's all.
It really is. Thanks.
Anybody else? Do you guys need? Yeah, James.
Okay, without going into the whole thing about Reform versus this or that or the Orthodox, which I know is horribly complicated, could talk about it for 100 hours and not even be halfway through it. But like the stuff, or okay, and I'm just asking for just like the brief thumbnail gist of it. Do conservative, the material that you said, well, like we're not, it's not in
Mishkan.
our Siddur, but Orthodox or something. Would that be in a conservative service and a conservative Siddur?
Most of it. They've cut out a little bit, but they have more. They have way more. And they certainly do Eladon and all of that stuff. They totally do it.
Okay, I was going to say, I'm familiar, I'm very loosely using the term, quote unquote, familiar with this. So to me, it's not something strange or alien. It's something I am basically familiar with.
Yeah, and if you have been familiar with it, then you know about it. And if you already have done it, then what we're doing here is looking at that meaning and looking at the structure and the story and how it was built and understanding why those things play into our weekly prayer, and the roots of it and all that kind of stuff and language and all that. But it's important to look at the theological reasons why people would choose one thing over another. They would go, wait a minute, we are saying that a lot of the things that are about our mystical tradition are not relevant to us, or they are not going to help our people the way that we want to, or whatever. The people are choosing for their reasons. There's loads of big philosophy about it, and so much of it all comes from the idea of rationalism, right? The Enlightenment happens, and after the Enlightenment is where, like, at least in the Christian world, denominationalism happens. And then the Enlightenment comes into the ghetto for the Jewish people afterward. We have the Haskalah, and at that point, then the Reform movement happens, which is like the idea of denominationalism. Wait a minute, all Jews are not alike. Maybe we can do Judaism in the ways that are meaningful for us, which is what the Christians were doing with their denominations. They're like, oh, we want our Protestantism to be like this, and they did a thing, and they made Baptists and Methodists and all the things. In that same token, years later, the Jews go, oh, we could be modern people and also be Jews. What does that mean? And they're thinking about philosophy and modern thought and rationalism too. So the first thing they want to do is get rid of anything that feels irrational to them. Because it was a different time, you understand, as they say. So they're wanting things to be very edited, very rationalist. They're very very modern science thinkers in the early 19th century. They're like, oh yes, we are all about science, and we're learning about evolution, and we're learning about germ theory, all these things about science. And the Industrial Revolution is happening. So everybody's like, yes, and we're going to be like our neighbors. No, we think our neighbors think we're a little too weird and too Jewish, running around doing all this Jew stuff. We dress like them. We dress like our neighbors in whatever country we're in. We speak our local language. And we're going to read our Torah, and we're going to read our prayers in our local language, because we are primarily a part of our country, wherever we live, and then we practice our religion in private, which was what was happening to religion post-Enlightenment, right, in Europe. So our denominationalism comes out of the Enlightenment, just like the Christian denominationalism does, Protestant denominationalism, rather. So the process of what people are doing is a reflection of their process of development, developing ideas, developing philosophies, developing theology, coming up with different ways to cope with all of our Jewish ideas. And over time, it changes and changes and changes, and then we get into a whole nother layer of thought that's postmodern. In the 50s and 60s happened, and that's postmodernism. And we start thinking about and experiencing ideas and spirituality a different way. The world has opened up, and we have learned about Eastern theologies. And we have realized that the world is big. And if the world is big, there are probably a lot of different ways to think about time and space. And so over time, we start remembering, all that stuff we were ignoring about Judaism, we already had that, didn't we? Let's dig it out. And that's what's happening. And that's what Neo-Hasidism is, which is, Neo-Hasidism is the postmodern emotional and spiritual experience of Judaism. It's the privileging of the emotional and spiritual over rationalism. And that's what I do, and my teachers have trained me to be a neo-Hasid, to privilege people's emotional and spiritual experience. Now, people do it in a lot of different ways, and we all strike a balance in different ways, because certainly I'm pretty darn rationalist, but rational mysticism is a part of that, right? Understanding how it functions as a Jungian idea. I hope I answered. All right, cool. All right. Anybody else? I got 7 more minutes, so I'll wrap it up if you guys are done. But if you have another question, I'm happy to entertain it. Yeah? Are you raising your hands up? Or were you just saying bye? No? Okay. All right. Okay. You'll figure it out. All right. Good. Okay, you guys, it's been awesome. I hope everybody's not too flooded. And if you are, please write me a note and I will answer any and all questions. You got another one, James?
I'm sorry. Just what is happening with adult Hebrew class, please?
Oh, yeah. We're trying to get it organized because the girl who's teaching adult Hebrew has to figure out when she's going to start. I'm hoping she can even start as soon as tomorrow night. But in the meantime, if you practice your Aleph Bet, you'll be prepped. But I think I want to know actually, before we go, since we're sitting here, what level are you reading on, James? You're already...
It's very basic beginner level. If you got an impression I'm more than that, sorry. It's very basic.
Phonics? Like, do you know the vowels and the consonants and everything?
I have a ways to go with vowel. I mean, the basic of the vowels, but there's plenty more I don't know yet.
Let me get with Samantha, and then I will write to you personally and give you an update.
Okay, just one quick question.
Yeah.
If I find out tomorrow at 6 p.m. that the Hebrew class, and I make it up, at 7 p.m., I don't know if I can get a payment done that fast, or if it's online, I guess maybe I could. Is that okay?
No, there's no pressure. No pressure on payment.
Okay.
No sweat ever. We never pressure payment. When you get to it, you get to it.
Okay, I just mean I fast as I can, but if it doesn't process or something, then
never. No, that's not if you look at our value statement, we value people over money. And so anytime somebody can't get to it soon enough or maybe doesn't have quite enough or whatever, it's fine. It doesn't matter. We don't even ask. You just
okay. All right.
Don't ask. Just do it when you can. It's all good.
Okay.
We'll probably have to buy a book at some point. I don't know when, but Samantha will tell you what book to buy. I don't know what she's using this time. All right. Okay. I'm going to peace out of here, you guys. Have a good evening. It's been an awesome class. It was super fun to talk about this with y'all. Hey, Kenya. And hey, Zev. Hey, James. Bye, Stace. See you guys soon. Long and prosper. Bye.